Hi guys, for today's trade of the day, we will be looking at the Kiwi dollar. And as usual, what I like to do is to start off with the long-term picture and then work my way down to the 4-hour and even the 1-hour to look for profitable trade setups. Now, as usual, we start off with the monthly, and for every time frame that we go lower, what I like to do is to find out the long-term support and the long-term resistance levels. So let's begin. Now we're on the Kiwi dollar monthly, and what we want to focus on is this area here. We want to focus on the more recent prices. It's not that the past is irrelevant, but the recent prices tells us roughly where the trend is. So offhand, we can actually see that the trend is price is in sort of a downward trending motion. And what we want to see here is to look for the long-term support and long-term resistance level. So graphically, we have a sort of a support level here, right? Because you see price actually tested this level and rejected off. And we want to confirm this with either Fibonacci extension or Fibonacci retracement. So why extension is because the movement started from here, price pushed lower before a bounce, and then it came lower again. So let's take an extension from the swing high to this low and back to this high, and we open up all the Fibonacci ratios. And we see that price actually falls right on 78.60 before a strong rejection. So let's just highlight the 78.60 level. And we can call this our long-term support. Okay, and because price has been making sort of a lower low, and that means that price is in a downtrend. You see, price made a high here, and then a lower high, yet another lower high, a lower high again, and one more lower high. So price is clearly in a downtrend. Right, and we want to see whether there is any sort of a graphical resistance, but it's a bit hard to see. So we shall take a retracement from the swing high here, recent high, to the low here. And we open our Fibonacci retracement ratios. And we see that price falls in line with this 61.8 level. So let's just highlight this key Fibonacci retracement level, and we can call this our long-term resistance. So now that we have our long-term resistance, long-term support, let's go down to the weekly. Let me just tidy this up. Okay, so on the weekly, because there's a huge space here, I want to tidy the trend line. I will take from here and tidy it up. It's cutting the candle, so that's not very nice. So when I tidy up this descending trendline resistance, I see that actually the trendline resistance falls right together with the long-term resistance. So if price were to make a push up, the target on the weekly would be somewhere along the long-term resistance at a 67.41 region, right? But now that we are on a weekly, what we want to do is also to find our weekly support and our weekly resistance. Now we see that price actually made a strong push downwards. So we'll take a retracement to see how far price can retrace upwards. We take a retracement from the swing high to this swing low, and we open up all the ratios. And of course, we see that there is sort of a price already surpassed the 23 and 38.2, and price is coming close to 50. But what I like to see is something like the key Fibonacci ratio, the 61.8%. So let's just highlight that. Now, the 61.8 is also in line with a sort of a graphical overlap. Why we call this the overlap is because once price surpasses this level, we can say that price has overlapped this graphical overlap level, and there's a chance that price will push higher, right? So we can call this our graphical overlap, and this shall be our weekly resistance. Now we have the weekly resistance. Let's find the weekly support. For the weekly support, it's a bit hard to see because it's only 1, 2, 3 bars. So 3 weeks since price has rejected this level. So we just have to take this small retracement from the swing low here to the swing high, which is 1 bar away, and we open up all Fibonacci ratios. Now we can see that the key Fibonacci ratio 61.8 has been tested. However, the two rejection would of the recent 2 weekly candles will be at the 38.2 level. Can see the rejection here, right? So we shall use the 38.2 as our weekly support. So now we have our weekly resistance. We'll put in our weekly support as well. So let's call this our weekly support. ID this chart up. Okay, so now on the weekly, we have our weekly resistance and we found our weekly support. The bias is for the price to push up at least towards the weekly support. And if price surpasses the weekly resistance. If price surpasses the weekly resistance, a further push up to the long-term resistance. Right? With that, we go down to the daily. Let me remove this long-term descending trend line because it's too far away and it doesn't serve its purpose on a daily. And for now, let me just tidy things up so it's easier to see. Okay, so we see that price actually has sort of made a push up, rejected off the long-term support, pushed up here, came back down here, retested this weekly support, and seems to be pushing upwards towards the weekly resistance. And because this is sort of a zigzag movement, let's use our extension. And we can open up all the Fibonacci ratios, and we see that the 61.8 is close to our weekly resistance, which is the long-term 61 retracement. So let's just highlight that level. And let's draw a box to show that this is indeed some sort of resistance level. So it's a resistance zone here, right? And let's try to find whether this weekly support, because the daily support seems too close, price seems quite close to the weekly support. This can very well possibly be our daily support as well. And we want to find some confluence, this sort of a bounce here. So we take a Fibonacci extension, we take from a swing high to the low and back up to where price is recently. We open up all Fibonacci ratios. Now I have to zoom this part, if not it's going to be a bit tough for you guys to see. But right now our weekly support and our daily support is quite close to the 78.60 extension level. So let me highlight that, and you see that right there. So this is actually a very small zone, but very close to our weekly and daily support. So now on the daily, the bias is the same as the weekly. I expect price to make one more push down to the weekly or daily support before going up to the weekly resistance, right? So let's go down to the 4 hours just to look for profitable and the best levels for entry. And once again, let me tidy this chart up for you. The long-term resistance is quite far away, so for now we can ignore it, right? And these are just the levels that we really want to focus on. Okay, so we can see that while price in the long term, recall on the monthly, price is holding below a descending trend line. But that does not mean that we have to be completely bearish all the way. On the 4 hour, we can actually draw an ascending trend line starting from this level here. And we hold it up here. And we see that price actually tests this ascending trend line once and twice. Seems like price could possibly come back to test the third time before making a push up to the weekly resistance, right? So because price made sort of this push up here, we want to see how far price can retrace back. And as long as the ascending trend line holds, we can use the ascending trend line as sort of an entry level. Okay, so I'll take a retracement from the swing low here to where price currently is. And then I'll open up all my Fibonacci retracement ratios. And I will zoom in so it's easier for you guys to see. And we see that the 50%, should price actually make a pullback, price would come somewhere between the 38 and the 50% region. So right now, the 50% region is more has more confluence with graphical. So because of price testing this area, so I actually highlight the 50% region and call it out intermediate support. All right. So what does this mean? Let me just highlight the 50% retracement. Okay. So this is what I see. As long as price comes down towards the intermediate support, this would be a good level for buying. And once price enters this zone, I would actually go long from here and play towards the weekly resistance. So anywhere in this zone would be a take profit zone, right? So once again, just to summarize this trade of the day, this 50% level at 0.5940 will be my entry. My take profit will be at the weekly resistance, this zone at 0.6258. And as if price were to break below my weekly support, my daily support, which is my pivot at 0.5843, only when price is below the weekly support, daily support, then I believe price will make a push down to retest the long-term support once again. But as long as price is above the weekly support and daily support, we are holding the short-term bullish bias. Right, so that's it for today. That's all for the trade of the day that we have. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you the next time.